The river moved very slowly, so slowly that it hardly seemed to move at all. Its wide surface caught the daylight and turned it into a soft, pale reflection of the sky. From a distance it looked almost flat, a sheet of quiet silver stretching between the banks. There was no rush to it, no urgency. The water passed by at its own unhurried pace, carrying nothing more than a few drifting leaves. The sound was low and steady, a faint murmur that blended into the air like background breath. It had been this way for a very long time and would stay this way for hours, maybe even for the whole day. On one side of the river lay a gentle slope of earth, packed down by centuries of stillness. Grass grew in patches, sometimes tall, sometimes flat against the ground, and in between the grass were small stones worn smooth by years of quiet weather. Some stones were half buried, showing only a curved edge above the soil. Others sat on the surface, warm from the sunlight. There were no footprints here, nothing to disturb the simple arrangement of dirt, stones, and grass. It seemed as if the land had been waiting for someone to notice how still it was. Near the water's edge, a large dinosaur rested. It had chosen the spot not because it was special, but because it was simply there, open and flat and good enough. The creature was heavy, its body pressed against the ground in a way that left shallow marks in the soil. Its long tail curved slightly to one side, not twitching, not swaying, just lying there as if it too had grown tired of movement. The dinosaur's skin carried the warm light of the sun, the faint shine of daylight across scales that barely shifted. Its sides rose and fell in the slow rhythm of breathing, nothing more than that, nothing less. The air was mild, neither too hot nor too cold, and it touched the surface of the river with only the smallest ripples. A breeze wandered by now and then, bending the grass and moving on. The dinosaur did not notice, or if it did, it gave no sign. The creature's eyes blinked once, then stayed half-closed, as though the effort of keeping them open did not feel necessary. There was no reason for alertness, no reason to act, no reason even to shift position. The day asked nothing of it, and so it gave nothing in return. Above, the sky was wide and pale, the kind of sky that holds light without trying to impress. A few clouds drifted across it at a pace so slow they might have been mistaken for stillness. They held their shape for long stretches of time, only softening at the edges as the minutes passed. The reflection of these clouds touched the water and stretched into gentle shapes across the river's surface. Together, the sky and the water formed a conversation of silence, each one repeating the calm of the other. Further along the riverbank, a second dinosaur lay close to the reeds. Its head rested on the ground as if placed there carefully and then forgotten. Its breath was steady, heavier than the first, filling the air with a low, soft rhythm that could almost be mistaken for a distant drumbeat. The reeds bent lightly in the breeze, brushing against one another with a faint rustling sound. But the dinosaur did not stir. It seemed comfortable, as though the day itself had folded around it, offering nothing to disturb its rest. Time here was not counted in minutes or hours, but in the gradual shifting of light. Shadows lengthened by the tiniest degree, stretching a little further across the ground, but only those who stared too long would notice. The dinosaurs did not care for the shadows, nor did they care for the position of the sun. To them, the world was simply present, and presence was enough. The ground was solid beneath them, the river steady beside them, the air gentle above them. Everything was in its place, and that was all. A bird circled high above, its wings moving in long, slow arcs. It did not cry out, did not rush its flight. When it tilted one way, the sunlight caught the pale underside of its wings. When it tilted the other way, it seemed to blend into the color of the sky. After a while, the bird drifted out of sight, leaving nothing behind, not even a sound. The dinosaurs remained as they were, untouched by its brief visit. If one looked closely at the water, they might see small insects skating across its surface, leaving lines that disappeared as quickly as they were made. They darted a little this way, a little that way, never straying too far, as if even they respected the calm of the river. Now and then, a bubble rose from beneath, drifted upward, and popped without a sound. The surface closed again immediately, returning to its original calm as though nothing had ever disturbed it. The dinosaurs breathed on, their bodies heavy, their minds empty. They did not hunger, did not thirst, did not seek anything. The day moved past them slowly, offering only light, warmth, and the faint whisper of the river. And in that simple offering, there was no need for more. They remained still, and stillness remained with them. The river made a sound that was not loud and not sharp, a steady, low murmur that seemed as though it had been going on for centuries without pause. It was the sort of sound that was not noticed at first, but became part of the air itself, the kind of sound that filled silence without breaking it. The water moved over stones hidden beneath its surface, and those stones shaped the current into gentle turns and faint swirls. There were no splashes, no sudden movements, only the endless rhythm of water going forward at a patient pace. The dinosaurs resting by its edge did not react to the noise. Their bodies were still, their eyes soft and half-closed, as though the sound of the river was not even sound to them, but simply a part of the world's breathing. One of the dinosaurs shifted its weight ever so slightly, the large side of its body pressing deeper into the ground, leaving a wider impression in the soil. Its tail, long and heavy, made the faintest scrape against the dirt before becoming still again. The adjustment was slow, almost invisible if one was not watching. The creature's chest continued to rise and fall in the same calm pattern as before, steady, measured, unchanged. From a distance, it would have looked as if nothing at all had happened. The sun hung high above the river, spreading light that was warm but not fierce. It painted the surface of the water with glimmers that wavered like slow-moving sparks, bright one moment, faint the next, then bright again, in a cycle that had no urgency. The warmth touched the dinosaurs' backs, seeping into their scales, softening their stillness into deeper rest. Their eyes blinked slowly, not to clear them, but simply because the body required it. When the eyelids lifted, they revealed no focus, no attention, just the dull calm of creatures content to do nothing. The grass around them swayed whenever the breeze decided to move through. It did not come often, and when it came, it was not strong. It slipped between blades of grass, leaned them in one direction, then left them to straighten themselves again. Some stalks bent lower than others, brushing against the side of a dinosaur's leg, but the animal gave no reaction. The touch was as light as a thought half-formed and forgotten. Even the insects resting on the grass held their places, undisturbed, as if they too knew that this was no time for suddenness. Near the reeds, a dragonfly hovered. Its wings beat fast, though the sound was faint and barely reached beyond its own body. It moved forward a few inches, then back, then circled lazily in the air before settling again. The river caught its reflection, stretching the thin form into a wavering line across the water. A ripple moved past, and the reflection vanished. The dragonfly flew on as though nothing had been lost. The dinosaurs, enormous and heavy, ignored its flight entirely, existing on a scale so different that the small movements around them mattered no more than the shifting of dust. One dinosaur, larger than the others, exhaled in a long, slow breath. The air left its lungs with a sound that was soft but heavy, like the quiet release of wind through a cave. Its nostrils flared, then stilled again. A small cloud of dust lifted from the ground, hung in the air for a few moments, and then drifted down without hurry, settling back into the soil from which it had come. When the dust had gone, the scene looked exactly the same as before, as though it had never risen at all. The shadows began to lean a little longer, stretching across the ground in subtle lines. The river caught those shadows too, laying them across its surface in distorted shapes. Nothing else marked the passing of time. The dinosaurs did not glance at the sky, did not measure the day. For them, the slow change of light was nothing more than a gentle backdrop to their stillness. They existed outside of urgency, beyond the need to count hours, caught in a moment that lasted as long as it needed to. A small fish broke the surface of the water with the quietest flick, creating a circle that spread wider and wider before fading back into flatness. The sound was almost nothing, but it was there, a faint note added to the endless murmur of the river. The dinosaurs, resting by the bank, did not turn their heads, did not even blink at the disturbance. The water smoothed again quickly, and once more the surface was calm, shining back the slow drift of clouds above. The ground itself smelled of warmth, a mix of sunlit soil and dampness from the river's edge. The air carried it in soft breaths, touching the nostrils of the creatures resting there. They did not sniff, did not respond, but it was present all the same, a reminder that the earth continued its quiet work even while they slept. The stillness around them was not emptiness. It was full of tiny, endless details, each one too small to matter, yet all of them together making up the quiet whole of the day. The dinosaurs remained as they were, breathing softly, resting against the earth, surrounded by the slow voice of the river. The world continued on without hurry, without demand, without change. The daylight lingered over them, steady and unbroken, as though it too had grown tired of moving quickly. Everything was slow. Everything was calm. Everything was enough. Along the edge of the river, where the bank met the water, there were clusters of reeds standing tall. Their thin stalks rose straight from the mud, green and simple, swaying only when the wind pressed against them. The tops bent slightly under their own weight, dipping toward the water before straightening again. Between them, patches of shallow water reflected the sun in tiny sparks. These bright points appeared and disappeared as ripples passed over them, as if the light itself had grown tired of holding one place for too long. The reeds whispered when the air moved, but the sound was faint and disappeared quickly. Beneath those reeds, the soil was soft and dark, shaped by years of water slipping over it. A few marks from smaller creatures crossed its surface, but they were not fresh. The earth seemed settled, pressed flat by countless days of quiet. Stones lay half buried there, their edges smoothed by the constant touch of water. Some were damp, shining faintly, while others were dry, gathering dust that glowed pale in the sunlight. None of them shifted. None of them had reason to. Insects floated above the reeds, drifting slowly, never far from their resting spots. Their wings caught the light with each slight movement, but they did not dart quickly or buzz with urgency. Instead, they hung in the air as if reluctant to choose any direction. The dinosaurs nearby did not notice. Their size placed them beyond such details, their attention given to nothing at all. Even when an insect landed on the rough surface of a stegosaurus's skin, the creature gave no reaction. The touch was too light to matter, too small to register against the weight of its rest. The stegosaurus lay close to the reeds, its body angled toward the river but not touching the water. Its plates caught the sunlight, shadows falling between them in slow, stretched lines. The creature's breathing moved the ground beneath it, a steady rhythm that made the soil shift slightly, then settle back into place. Its tail extended behind, straight but relaxed, the tip resting on the grass without a twitch. Its eyes were almost closed, showing only a narrow gleam, and when a blink came, it was slow, as though even that motion required too much effort. A little further down the bank, the water curved gently around a cluster of larger rocks. The current moved around them with ease, sliding between gaps, curling into soft eddies. The sound of this movement blended into the constant murmur of the river, deeper here, fuller, but still without urgency. Shadows stretched across the rocks, their shapes distorted by the rippling water. The rocks themselves carried marks from long ages, grooves and smooth surfaces that spoke of countless days exactly like this one, unchanged and unhurried. A few birds landed near the water's edge. They walked carefully, their small feet leaving prints in the damp soil. Now and then they lowered their heads to peck at the ground, lifting them again without finding much. Their movements were delicate, unthreatening, a part of the day rather than a break from it. When they stepped closer to the dinosaurs, they did not pause or turn back. The great creatures lying still gave no reason for fear. The birds lingered only a few minutes before spreading their wings and flying upward again, their quiet flapping fading quickly into distance. The sunlight spread over everything evenly, soft in its brightness, without harshness. It filled the air with a warmth that sank into stone and soil, into the reeds and into the thick hides of the dinosaurs. That warmth carried no demand. It did not force movement, did not push the creatures to rise or to feed. It simply lay upon them, heavy but kind, and in that weight the day stretched longer, slower, fuller. The stillness of the river was echoed in the stillness of the animals beside it. The brontosaurus shifted its head, lowering it toward the ground until its jaw touched the earth. The motion was deliberate, unhurried, as if even gravity's pull had to wait its turn. Once the head settled, it stayed there, unmoving, the eyes closing in longer pauses. The chest rose with each deep breath, and each breath released a sound like a faint sigh, blending into the air so smoothly that it was almost not there at all. The rest of the body stayed heavy against the soil, pressing down as if it had become part of the earth itself. The shadows of the reeds stretched over the water, bending with each ripple. They seemed to grow and shrink at once, never holding the same shape for more than a moment, yet never truly changing either. The reflections of the dinosaurs touched the river's surface, their outlines broken by movement of the current. Each time the water shifted, the forms dissolved and reformed, a slow dance of shapes that meant nothing and demanded nothing. The animals themselves did not notice. They were present in body only, their minds quiet, their stillness deeper than the shifting images they left behind. Time moved quietly through the scene. It left no sharp markers, no sudden shifts, only the gradual drift of light and shadow. The reeds bent and straightened. The water continued its endless passage. The dinosaurs lay where they had chosen to lie, their breathing steady, their stillness unbroken. Around them, the world offered only calm, and they accepted it without thought, without effort. The day belonged to no one, carried forward by the river, stretched wide by the silence, held gently in the weight of resting giants. The stegosaurus lay near the edge of the river, its body stretched long across the grass and soil. Its legs were folded beneath it in a way that made the weight of its body sink into the ground, pressing shallow hollows into the earth. The plates on its back rose high above the still form, catching the light in different shades, one side brighter where the sun reached it directly, the other side darker in shadow. The air around it seemed heavy, filled with the sound of slow breathing, a sound that did not rise sharply but moved like a soft tide in and out of the creature's chest. The tail extended into the grass behind, unmoving, a line of quiet strength left to rest. The river's surface reflected the shape of the dinosaur in long, broken lines. The water carried each reflection into a wavering form, bending and straightening with every small ripple. It was not a perfect mirror, but one that shifted endlessly, never holding the same image for more than a moment. The reflection of the plates appeared, stretched, then vanished, then returned again, each time with a slight change. The Stegosaurus itself, however, did not change at all. It remained where it was, heavy, still, and silent except for the slow pull of its lungs. Around its body, insects moved with lazy purpose. Some hovered close to the warm skin, their wings making the faintest hum. Others landed briefly before lifting again, never hurried, never frightened. They were part of the day's simple rhythm, filling the space between larger motions with small, unnoticed ones. A single beetle crawled slowly across one of the Stegosaurus's legs, following the grooves of its skin as though tracing a path. The creature did not stir. The contact was too small, too unimportant to break the calm. The eyes of the dinosaur blinked once, the lids closing in a motion so slow that it seemed the act of shutting them might take an entire minute. When they opened again, the gaze was soft, unfocused, without aim. The eyes did not search for food or for danger. They did not follow the insects or the river or the movement of clouds overhead. They looked at nothing, held nothing, resting in their own quiet state. Another breath came, another soft rise of the chest, another long release. Close to the Stegosaurus, the ground was dry where the sun had touched it all day. The soil held faint cracks, thin lines across its surface, like the marks of age and time. The grass around those cracks was short, bent, uneven, but steady. The sunlight spread across it evenly, pulling no attention, offering no surprise. Every detail was ordinary. Every detail was exactly where it had always been. A bird passed overhead, its shadow gliding over the plates of the Stegosaurus for a brief second before sliding away across the grass. The dinosaur did not follow the shadow, did not move its head. The shadow itself was faint, a soft shift of light rather than a sharp line. In a moment it was gone, leaving behind the same calm surface, the same soft warmth of daylight. The water close by continued to murmur, brushing lightly against the edge of the soil. Small circles spread where insects touched the surface, fading into nothing as quickly as they began. A stick floated past, turning slowly in the current, carried away without pause, without effort. The river accepted it and carried it forward, no faster, no slower, simply steady. The reflection of the Stegosaurus stretched again across that water, and the stick passed through it, breaking the shape into pieces before it came together again. The plates along the back of the dinosaur grew warmer under the steady light. They held the heat, radiating it back into the air, though the creature itself gave no notice. The warmth settled deeper into its body, slowing its heart, easing its weight. Each part of its being seemed pressed into the ground, held there not by force, but by the simple will of rest. Its breaths deepened, its chest rising higher, falling lower, as though the very act of drawing air had become slower with each passing moment. The grass bent under the bulk of the animal, pressed flat into the earth. Some blades broke, others lay folded, and a few still stood upright against the edge of its skin. Beyond the body, the grass continued as before, moving lightly with a faint breeze, never rushing, never quick. The pattern repeated again and again, stillness here, movement there, each part balanced in the same calm rhythm. Another blink passed over the dinosaur's eyes. Another long breath filled the air. The river flowed on. Nothing changed. The stillness deepened, and the day carried on as though it would never end. The Stegosaurus remained in its place, heavy and calm, watching nothing, moving for nothing, a quiet shape beside the river that seemed as eternal as the water itself. The Brontosaurus rested farther along the bank, its enormous body stretched across a patch of grass that had been flattened beneath its weight. Its neck, long and heavy, curved slowly downward until its head touched the ground. The motion had been steady, almost too slow to notice, but now that it was complete the head lay in stillness, the jaw pressed lightly against the soil. The eyes closed for long moments at a time, opening only slightly before slipping shut again. Its breath came deep and low, rolling through its chest in heavy waves, each one drawn out as though it could last forever. The sunlight poured over its back, covering the wide surface of its skin in a warm glow. The hide looked like a landscape of its own, textured with ridges and folds, places where the light was caught, and places where it slipped into shadow. Dust clung to parts of it, pale against the darker tone, while other spots gleamed faintly where the skin had warmed in the sun. The sheer size of the animal gave the impression of a hill lying across the earth, so much a part of the land that it was difficult to tell where one ended and the other began. Beside the Brontosaurus, the river moved on with the same quiet patience as always. Its reflection appeared faintly on the surface, a long shape broken by ripples and drifting patterns. Each time the current shifted, the reflection bent and stretched, only to come together again. The water did not hurry, and the image did not matter. It was simply there, held briefly before being lost again. A few reeds stood close by, their tops brushing the side of the Brontosaurus's neck whenever the breeze stirred. The animal gave no sign of noticing. Its breathing did not change, its eyes did not flicker open. The reeds themselves seemed small and fragile in comparison, yet they continued to sway in their own rhythm, touching and retreating over and over, with no effect at all on the calm giant beside them. The air around the river carried the warmth of daylight, mixed with the faint dampness of water. Every so often, a faint ripple of wind came across the surface, carrying with it the smell of wet soil, fresh grass, and stone that had sat in sunlight all day. The Brontosaurus's nostrils widened slightly when a breath came in, but it did not move beyond that. The scent was part of the air, and the air was part of its rest. The ground beneath the creature's body was pressed flat, the soil compacted into shallow grooves where its weight had settled. The grass there had given way, bending under the mass, while further out, untouched blades stood upright, bending only when the wind brushed them. The edges of its body met this line of upright grass like a border, one part still, the other gently shifting. The contrast was subtle, but it carried the sense of two worlds beside each other, one unmoving, one alive with small, endless motions. Its tail stretched across the earth, wide at the base and tapering to a thinner point. The very end rested across a small patch of stones, their rounded surfaces hidden beneath its weight. They did not move, held firmly in place, as though they had always belonged there. The tail itself showed no sign of life except in its presence, a vast line drawn across the ground, beginning and ending without effort. Above, the sky remained pale, carrying clouds that drifted slowly without forming any urgent shapes. They spread out, softened, and dissolved with time, but the changes were so faint that they seemed part of the stillness rather than a departure from it. Shadows from these clouds passed across the Brontosaurus now and then, dimming the brightness of its skin before sliding away again. The creature did not stir under the change. The dimness and the brightness were equal to it, both unimportant, both accepted without notice. A group of small birds landed not far from its body. They picked carefully at the soil, their beaks moving with precision as they searched for whatever crumbs of life the ground might offer. Their tiny movements seemed busy when compared to the weight of the Brontosaurus, but in the greater stillness of the day, even they moved without true speed. When one of them hopped closer to the curve of its leg, the giant gave no reply. The bird soon moved on, its small tracks left behind in the soil, shallow marks beside the deep impression of the creature's weight. The hours slipped by in the same way the river flowed, quietly, without any sharp change. Shadows lengthened, though only by degrees, and the warmth of the air grew softer. The Brontosaurus remained as it had been, breathing, resting, its body pressed into the earth. Every rise and fall of its chest was another marker of calm, another measure of time's passage without urgency. Its eyelids closed again, this time for longer, and when they lifted once more, the gaze behind them was just as heavy, just as indifferent. The river continued its murmur. The grass swayed when the wind called. The clouds shifted in their slow drift. The Brontosaurus remained still, its head resting, its body unmoving, its mind free of any need. The day carried on around it, but to the creature, the day was nothing more than light and air, ground and water, silence and rest. All else was left to pass by, unmarked, unmeasured, forgotten before it even began. The wide view of the river stretched far in both directions, bending only gently where the land asked it to. On one side, the bank rose in a soft slope, scattered with tall grass that leaned whenever the wind came by. On the other, the ground was flatter, pressed down over time by the flow of water, smoother and darker where it met the edge. The air above it all was quiet, filled only with the low, constant murmur of water passing over stone. Nothing hurried. Nothing forced its way forward. The sound was patient, steady, and without end. The dinosaurs lay across this scene as if they had always belonged there. Their bodies were vast, yet they looked natural against the scale of the river and the sky. One Brontosaurus had lowered its head fully to the soil, its neck stretched in a long curve that touched the ground near the reeds. Its breathing filled the air like a rhythm too deep to mark with numbers, each inhale slow, each exhale slower still. Beside it, the Stegosaurus rested without change, its plates standing high yet serving no purpose in this stillness. A smaller creature lay farther back, nearly hidden in the tall grass, its shape blending with the shadows. All of them were quiet, their presence a part of the calm. The river's surface glimmered in places where sunlight touched it, small pieces of light shifting like scattered dust. The current carried faint movements, bits of leaves, a broken reed, a scrap of bark, that drifted past the dinosaurs without notice. Each object followed the water, spinning once or twice before slipping further downstream. No splash broke the surface, no rush of water disturbed the stillness. The river accepted everything it carried, and everything it carried moved in the same slow way. The forest edge stood back from the water, a line of trees that watched without sound. Their trunks rose straight and patient, their branches spread wide but without haste. A few leaves dropped from them, spinning through the air in wide, lazy arcs before settling on the ground. Some landed on the river itself, floating gently before being carried onward. The sound of those leaves striking the water was too faint to hear, their presence vanishing almost at once into the endless drift. The trees did not change for it. They remained as they were, rooted and still. The light of the sun had softened now, not harsh, not sharp, but even and steady. It touched the backs of the dinosaurs, warming their skin, filling the day with weight but not discomfort. The creatures responded to it only in the way their bodies settled more deeply into the ground. Their sides rose, their sides fell, and the warmth wrapped them like a blanket without edges. The air was calm, the breeze weak, the weight of the sun steady, and in all of it there was no call to move. A single ripple spread across the river from where a fish surfaced. The circle widened slowly, reaching the bank and breaking against the stones before fading back into the flat surface. The fish disappeared without a sound, its motion forgotten as quickly as it had begun. The dinosaurs did not stir, did not look, did not blink for it. Their minds were sunk into a quiet deeper than the passing events of water or air. The grass bent under the bodies of the creatures closest to the edge. Each blade lay pressed flat, trapped beneath the heavy stillness, unable to rise. Beyond their shapes, the grass moved again, bending and lifting with the faint rhythm of the breeze. This contrast marked where the world held motion and where it did not. It was not sharp, not striking, but a line drawn by weight and air together. To any who might look, it would have seemed as though the day had paused there, half moving, half still, each part content in its place. The longer the hours stretched, the more the shadows grew across the ground. They reached from the trees, from the reeds, from the plates of the Stegosaurus, from the curve of the Brontosaurus's tail. The shadows lengthened without notice, sliding across the soil and water with patience. The dinosaurs gave them no thought, their closed eyes unaware of the shape of light. For them, time had no edges, no breaks. The world was only this moment, stretched wide, unchanging in its calm. A dragonfly passed near the water's edge, wings flashing as they caught the sun. It hovered for a long while, drifting forward and backward, tracing small paths in the air. Then it landed on a stone, resting as if even its quick body had grown slow here. The river brushed against that stone, and the dragonfly's reflection touched the water for a moment before being broken by a ripple. The insect did not notice. The dinosaurs did not notice. All was quiet again almost as soon as it had happened. The earth smelled of warmth and dampness, the two scents mixing gently as the breeze moved them together. The dinosaurs lay in that scent as though wrapped in it, unmoving, unbothered. Dust lifted now and then when a breath left the nostrils of the Brontosaurus, small clouds rising and settling again. Each one returned to the soil as if nothing had disturbed it at all. The soil, the air, the river, the giants, each part rested within the same rhythm of patience. The forest remained silent. The water kept its voice low. The sky above spread pale and wide, without sharp color, without weight. The dinosaurs lay together, heavy forms pressed into the land, their stillness unbroken. The world moved in small ways, ripples, breezes, shifting light, but those movements only added to the calm. No urgency lived here. No call for change. The river flowed, the ground waited, the creatures breathed. That was all, and that was enough. The light over the river had taken on a softer color, stretched thin as the day went forward. The sky held a pale brightness, not fading yet, but no longer carrying the sharp edge of midday. It seemed to spread more evenly, as though the air itself was glowing, the sun less direct, more gentle in its touch. The water reflected this light in long ripples, each one catching the glow for a brief moment before letting it slide away. The river looked endless. Though it moved so slowly, it might have been mistaken for standing still. Its voice had not changed, that quiet murmur that filled the air like breath drawn from the earth itself. The dinosaurs beside it remained as they had been, their vast bodies pressed into the ground with no effort. The Stegosaurus lay unmoved, plates catching both shadow and light, a pattern that shifted as clouds drifted above. The Brontosaurus had lowered itself further, its head now resting fully against the soil, nostrils pressed close enough that each exhale sent a faint stir of dust into the air. When the dust rose, it drifted for only a few seconds before falling again, as though even particles in this place could not escape the weight of calm. The tall grass along the bank leaned toward the water when the breeze came, then straightened slowly when it passed. Each blade seemed to take its time, bending, pausing, then lifting again with patience. A few seeds floated away, carried lightly above the ground before landing somewhere farther down the bank. Their path was uncertain but unimportant. The air would decide for them, and the air itself was in no hurry. The forest at the edge of sight held its own silence. Its trees stood unmoving, their leaves whispering only when stirred by the faintest wind. The sound they made was light and quick, fading almost as soon as it began. In between those soft whispers, nothing filled the space. The quiet felt complete, unbroken, as though the forest had chosen to rest alongside the creatures by the water. A single bird glided low across the river, wings spread wide, almost not moving at all. Its shadow passed over the water, darkened the surface for a moment, and then slipped away. The bird gave no cry, its flight smooth and without effort. When it reached the other side, it lifted higher, vanishing into the pale stretch of sky. The dinosaurs did not notice. Their eyes stayed closed or half shut, their minds sunk too deeply into the weight of stillness to follow anything in the air. Closer to the river's edge, the reeds swayed in a slow, steady rhythm. Their thin bodies brushed against one another, creating a soft, dry sound, like faint whispers repeated without meaning. They bent under the light wind, rose again, and bent once more. Some leaned far enough to touch the surface of the water, leaving small arcs across it before lifting back into place. The arcs smoothed away almost at once, and the river returned to its calm face, as if the reeds had never moved at all. The brontosaurus shifted slightly, the slow turn of its head creating a soft scrape of skin against soil. Its eyes opened a fraction wider, not in alertness, but in the dull, heavy rhythm of a body half asleep. The lids hovered, then lowered again, closing the world off once more. Its chest expanded in another deep inhale, the ribs pressing outward, then sank again in release. Each breath sounded like part of the landscape itself, a heavy, drawn-out note that matched the rhythm of the river beside it. The stegosaurus did not move. Its body looked almost like a statue, fixed in place by time rather than choice. The plates on its back gave it the shape of something designed to stand out, but here, lying low in the grass, they became only part of the pattern of shadow and light. A line of insects crawled across its skin, each one following the next, their path unbroken for a long stretch of time. When they reached the edge, they continued down to the soil and vanished into the grass. The dinosaur remained untouched by them, neither bothered nor aware. The hours drifted on with the same quiet pace, marked only by the lengthening of shadows. They stretched farther across the bank, sliding into the river where the water broke them into softer shapes. Each shadow shifted by such small degrees that one would notice only after staring for a long while. The dinosaurs gave them no thought. They lay as they had, heavy and calm, their presence fixed against the slow passage of the day. The air carried a warmth that had grown steady, not harsh, not fading. It felt full, like a weight that pressed gently over everything without demanding any change. The dinosaurs sank into that weight as if it belonged to them, their bodies shaped by it, their stillness deepened under it. The smell of soil, of water, of grass baked in the light hung steady in the air, thick but not unpleasant. Every breath the creatures took pulled it in, but none of them reacted. It was not new, not strange. It was simply what the air carried, as it always had. Downstream, the water curved around another cluster of stones. The current thickened there, deepening its voice, though it still spoke in quiet tones. Foam gathered for a brief moment where the water pressed hardest, then slipped away in bubbles that rose and vanished. The stones had stood there for ages, worn smooth by time, holding their place with patience as the river touched them again and again. Their presence was constant, like the dinosaurs resting nearby, a part of the landscape rather than a change within it. The scene carried no urgency, no sharp edges, no sudden turns. Every sound was low, every movement drawn out, every detail softened by time. The river kept moving, but so slowly it seemed not to. The air kept touching the grass, but only lightly, without insistence. The creatures kept breathing, their bodies heavy, their minds silent. The day stretched on, not forward, not backward, only outward, endless in its stillness. The day lingered in a long stretch of quiet, the sun still above the horizon but softened now into a calmer glow. The light had changed, not in a sudden way but with a slow patience, as though it too preferred to move without notice. It reached across the water in pale lines, touching the ripples until each one looked like a moving piece of glass. The river's voice was the same, a low murmur that blended into the air, steady and endless, the kind of sound that seemed less like something happening and more like something that had always existed. The dinosaurs lay as they had all along, their bodies pressed into the ground as if they had chosen to become part of it. The Brontosaurus had lowered itself so completely that it looked like a ridge of the earth, its back broad, its neck stretched along the soil, its tail a line across the grass. Its breathing moved slowly, each inhale drawing in the heavy warmth of the day, each exhale releasing it again into the open air. The rise and fall of its chest was the only sign of life, so steady and calm that it matched the rhythm of the water beside it. The Stegosaurus remained fixed near the reeds, its plates holding the last of the sun's brightness. Shadows gathered between them, soft lines stretched across its back. The head stayed low, the eyes closed in a quiet that suggested no thought, no dream, no memory, only the endless ease of rest. The soil beneath it was pressed flat, the grass folded down into faint patterns that would remain long after it chose to move, though there was no sign it would do so soon. The river carried on with its patient work, pulling leaves and bits of debris along its surface. A branch drifted past, caught briefly in the reeds before sliding free again. It turned slowly as it moved, turning and turning until it vanished around the bend. The water accepted everything in this same way, with no effort, no refusal, no change in its voice. Each new object was carried in silence, absorbed into the current that stretched without end. The air cooled slightly as time passed, though it still held the warmth of daylight. It moved lightly across the grass, bent the reeds, touched the hides of the dinosaurs without waking them. The smell of damp earth and sunlit stone remained, softened now but still present. Each breath of the animals drew it in, though they did not shift or stir. Their minds were far away from need, their bodies content with the weight of stillness. A cloud slid across the sky, its shadow spreading over the river and the bank. For a moment, the light dimmed, the brightness softened into a gentler tone. The creatures gave no sign they noticed. When the shadow passed, the light returned, and the day looked unchanged. The slow drift of clouds continued above, shaping and reshaping in silence, mirrored faintly in the water before being broken apart by ripples. The forest stood beyond, dark with depth, holding its silence as the hours stretched longer. The branches swayed slightly when the wind moved through, but no sound rose beyond a faint whisper. A few leaves let go, dropping into the air in wide, circling paths before settling on the soil. Some landed on the broad backs of the dinosaurs and stayed there, unmoving, blending into the stillness. Others reached the river and floated away, their small journey unnoticed. The shadows grew longer across the ground, reaching out from the trees, from the reeds, from the bodies of the resting animals. They stretched into the river, where the water bent them and carried them in distorted lines. Each change was slow, impossible to mark by the moment, only clear when seen over long patience. Time itself seemed to be moving at the same pace as the river, sliding forward without rush, without weight, without urgency. The dinosaurs remained the same, their presence heavy but calm, unshaken by anything around them. Their breathing marked the hours, their stillness deepened with each passing minute. They were not waiting, not hiding, not preparing. They were simply resting, their lives folded into the quiet of the day. The ground held them. The air surrounded them. The water passed by their side. Together, these things formed a scene that asked nothing more and gave nothing less. As the sun lowered, the light leaned across the water in wide bands. The river glowed with it, carrying the brightness forward, letting it scatter across each ripple. The sky spread pale above, calm and soft, with no sign of change beyond the slow drift of clouds. The forest darkened at its edges, but even there the quiet remained. The world seemed to sink deeper into itself, not closing, not ending, but settling into an even heavier stillness. The Brontosaurus breathed again, the long exhale moving dust into the air before it drifted back down. The Stegosaurus blinked once, then closed its eyes again. The smaller forms in the grass stayed hidden, their shapes barely seen in the lengthening light. The reeds swayed once more, brushed each other with faint sounds, then grew still again. The water rolled on, carrying its quiet voice into the distance, carrying the reflection of the sky with it. Nothing more happened. Nothing needed to. The river kept moving. The air kept touching the ground. The dinosaurs kept resting. The day stretched wider, slower, quieter, until it seemed to fill every part of the land. And in that wide, endless calm, the creatures by the river remained as they had been all along, still and silent, part of the earth, part of the light, part of the slow and gentle passage of time itself.